everybody. This is hour 25. My name's Sarah Scott. I'm here with Janet Osselak, and this is our second look at search capabilities on Perseus at PhiloLogic. And we're looking again at some Greek searches that we can do with using these tools. So I'm just going to screen share.
Yes, there.
And there's the search box. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to look at is, last time we looked at searching for words and phrases, but you might want to encompass a wider range of words if there's a particular concept, maybe a semantic idea, meaning that you want to explore, or if you're really not quite sure what the Greek ending is or something like that, you can actually use a wildcard. So I'm going to look for one of the words for anger in Greek, which is kolos, often transliterated as K-H-O-L-O-S. It's the Greek chi, which in our search would be a letter X, because it looks much the same. So we put the first three letters, kol, and then an asterisk. I don't know if you can see there's a little pop-up here. I've done this search before, so it's remembering those searches. That's quite handy if you want to repeat a search that you've done before. Anyway, there's X-O-L asterisk.
So asterisk is our wild card.
That's right. The asterisk will find one or more characters following those three. And remembering to put transliteration, since we're not putting in the Greek, but it works just the same if you put the Greek letters in there. Okay, and I'm going to restrict this just to Homer, just so we don't get too many results. And we'll search. And we can see that it's found various passages. This is another occasion where perhaps keyword in context report might be a little easier to see. You can see the different words as you go down, kolos, and then colon, and so forth. If you're not quite sure what the word means, we know kolos perhaps is anger, the noun, but if we're not quite sure what these are, kolos, samanai, you can click on it, and it comes from a verb here, koloo, to make angry or provoke anger, and it's suggesting that it's probably the aorist middle participle in the feminine nominative plural. So it's probably referring to female objects or people or goddesses who are making angry or provoking anger. And just with the other search, the same thing. It's showing the first line of the page on which the particular word appears. So that can be very useful if you're exploring a whole concept and you want to look at related words. One little word of caution, it might be if you put in something that there are two words that are spelt very similarly. They start with the same letters but actually are not related at all. So that's, again, a good reason to check the meaning of each one to make sure it really is related to this concept of anger and you haven't got something that just looks similar but is completely unrelated. Okay. I'm going to go back to the search. Just going straight back to the search this time because I'm going to start something completely new. You can use the back, but you then have to remember to use the clear all button to start over. We've got a nice clean slate here. There are some additional search options at the bottom, and one I'm going to look at here, refined search results, and that gives us some additional search options. So I'm going to use one of the words that we've had before, lemma pontos, and I'm going to do a keyword in context as we did before. But doing it here, we've got an additional option here to sort it both by the keyword and the word either to its left or to its right. So I'm just going to leave it sorted by keyword and word to its right. And I'm going to do search. Oh no, nearly forgot to do transliteration. Search text. You can see that this is quite useful if you're trying to look for common patterns. You can see this is now sorted not by author, but it's sorted by sort of Greek alphabetical order. So you've got all the pontoio together, all the ponton together, and then next to it you've got the word to its right, again in alphabetical order. And it's quite easy to see. I mean, there's an example there. You've got two passages with exactly the same phrase, just immediately to its right, and even to its left. But it's quite a good way of finding a pattern. You can then choose to resort if you want to, sort it by keyword, word to the left, and then the keyword, and sort. And so now we've got this word in alphabetical order to the left, and because the first sort is on the word to the left, so that all ones beginning with alpha, beta, and so on, and then the keyword. Or you can sort it by keyword and then word to the left. It will just come up slightly differently. And now we've got the main sort again on our keyword, and then the left. So all the pontoio, you've then got ek, en, eso, kai, and so forth. So that can be quite useful for finding patterns. You've also got an option if you want to sort by author and various other things as well. So again, it's another way of sorting things where you've got a lot of results and a way of finding passages that you might particularly want to look at. So that's quite a useful thing. Go back to the search. I'm going to do another. I'm going to use the word we've had before, kolos, and concentration. And this is something we can see how frequently is the word used by author. That might be useful if you're trying to do a comparison between different authors, or see if a word was used more frequently in epic compared to tragedy or something like that, for example. So we'll just have a little look at that just to show you how it works. And here we can see the results, starting with the most frequent. And it comes up quite a lot in Iliad, not very often in Odyssey. Next most frequent is in Argonautica. But here's another thing that you might notice in the square brackets. Although it comes up more often in Homer, there's 0.72, whereas in Argonautica, the figure here is 2.3. So Iliad and Odyssey are much longer works than Argonautica, but although there aren't quite as many times it comes up in Argonautica, it comes up relatively more frequently. That's the rate per 10,000 words. And it's a way of kind of leveling out texts of different lengths. And so you can see how relatively frequently an author uses it, as well as how many times it actually occurs. So if you've got a short piece and a long piece, you can sort of make an equal comparison between them. So you can do, again, you can do this with any word you want. So that might be something that people might find useful or interesting. Okay. And there's one more I'm going to show you, which is something called collocation.
Right. Uh, if people are not familiar with the word collocation, what does that mean?
Okay. It means words that co-locate. In other words, words that appear in close proximity to each other. And so what we'll be doing is putting in a word, and we'll see what other words quite often come near in the text. So not necessarily right next to it. You can change how far apart you're searching, but again, it's something that might be quite useful because sometimes you might have words separated by 2 or 3 other words, maybe little words like particles, but this will give you an idea of maybe themes. Again, it doesn't substitute for a close reading, but again, if you're looking at something, particularly if it's a word that comes up quite frequently, it might help you spot a trend that particular words are quite often appear in proximity together, and you can look at those passages in more detail to see what that might mean. Okay, so I'm going to look for the word oinops. It's one that we've already studied, and so we kind of know what the results are likely to be, but we can just have a little look at it so you can see how that works with something that we've already studied. I've selected it because it's something I've already searched for, but if it's something you haven't searched for before, obviously just type it in. I'm not going to specify an author, and I'm going to leave it just set at 5 words, but you've got a range between 1, which will be words only appear immediately either side of it, or up to 10, which is obviously just over a line apart, within a couple of lines. Beyond that, you're going to get all sorts of words, and it stops being meaningful. But I'll just leave it at 5, so you can see how it works, and then that's something that you can experiment with when you do searches for yourself. So I'm just going to search the text. And here's the results. And because I chose lemma, it's finding all the different parts that actually appear. So I chose all the instances oinops. But what we can see here from the word cloud, it's finding ponton and ponto. Now, it might be useful to say, well, we want to consider all of those together. All the examples where oinops appears with the word pontos. So I'm going to go back and just refine that just a little bit further. And here, if you tick use lemmas, it will use lemmas on the results as well, and kind of consolidate them together, which might be a little bit easier. It's up to you which you do. So we'll do search the text, and this time you can see from our word cloud, it's just saying pontos. It's just giving the lemma form, no matter whether what part of speech it appears. And that I think is perhaps a little bit easier to see which are the words that come out most. So the word cloud gives you a nice visual, and you can see pontos first, which we expected. And that is just a word cloud, and that is what's the equivalent of this first column here. And they're listed in order, and pontos comes up most frequently, and then en, in, epi, on, de, and then naus, or neus, ship. So ship quite often comes up in close proximity to oinops, which you might not expect, except for the fact that it's probably related to the word pontos here. So you might also notice there's 2 other columns, and so it's splitting them up into whether it's on the left or on the right. And some of them are fairly evenly distributed. They're quite often to the left or to the right. Mesos, middle, quite often to the left. Ship quite often comes up on either side, but pontos is always on the right. And things like epi and in, on, pretty much always on the left. So it can give you an idea of some of the words you might not necessarily have expected to find. Obviously, some of these are not very frequent, but where you've got a more frequent word than this, it might help you spot a trend that you maybe hadn't. If you've got a lot of passages it might give you an idea of which are the things that most often come up, and then you can find some passages and look at those in more detail to see what a trend might be. And this trend is something that we actually found from our own close observation anyway, so we kind of know it works. I'd make one other little note of caution, particularly if you're not very familiar with Greek. This is only going to show individual words that come up next to it. But supposing you had, maybe I'll take an example of the words for wind. There's a different word in Greek for north wind, south wind, wind in general. So if each of those came up 2 or 3 times individually, they would be fairly low down on the list, with the 2s and 3s. But collectively, we know that we might think of them in a similar way, because they're all different types of wind, but they're not going to appear near the top of the list. So that's just one little precautionary note. So I'll go back again. You can see overall trends by using this corpus linguistic technique of using the electronic searches on a large body of text. But then you've got to really go back and then look at them in a little bit more detail. It just gives us a little window in as to how we might look at them more effectively, or choose passages to look at. Okay. And there are other search options, but I think those will give people a good start in getting an idea of how to use Perseus under PhiloLogic, and then you can try out some of the other search term options for yourselves, and maybe report back at some time. If you're a member of our 25, you can report back on the discussion forum threads. Let us know how you get on with it. Let us know if you've come up with any more search patterns that you found particularly useful. So that's all for today.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Janet.